Hello and welcome. As an actor, he made a name for himself portraying sophisticated South Asians in hits such as A Passage to India and The Jewel in the Crown. But his Hollywood roles included everything from playing terrorists and bad guys to a Mujahideen ally of James Bond. This week on One on One, meet British-Pakistani actor Art Malik. The world of theatre hooked Art Malik during his school years in Balham, South London, prompting the handsome Punjabi towards a scholarship to the prestigious Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Art Malik's career has included a number of classical hits, one of the most famous being his role as Hari Kumar in the 1982 British television production The Jewel in the Crown, which prompted director David Lean to cast him in his epic production A Passage to India, and he later appeared in The Far Pavilions, another British Raj story released in 1984. Hollywood later had Malik cast as the villain opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 1994 hit True Lies, after he'd played an Afghan Mujahideen supporting James Bond Timothy Dalton in The Living Daylights in 1987. 2002 proved to be a difficult year for Art Malik's family when the 23-year-old boyfriend of his daughter Jessica died in their swimming pool following the use of cocaine, ecstasy and alcohol during her birthday party. Despite the lure of Hollywood, he continues to be based out of Britain, where he focuses on his family and an acting career that never fails to keep him busy. Art, it's great to chat with you.
Thank you.
You're splitting your time between movies and the stage. You've done both for a long time. In terms of what it gives you, what each one gives you, what do you find? What sort of satisfaction do you get from each one?
The mechanical medium, which is what I call it, which is whether you do television or you do radio or you do film. It's basically about working between those words action and cut, and you try and get those moments right, and everybody's trying to get those moments right. And if you don't get it right, you go back and you do it again. That's the mechanical side of it. And you're usually working with no audience. You're usually working with crew. And even if you do one of the most brilliant emotive scenes where you weep at the end of it, what eventually happens is, you've given your all. You hear the words cut, and the director says, "That's it. We're moving on to the next scene." And then everybody just goes. And the director might come up and go, "Lovely, well done, really good, thanks," and they're on. And you move on. Theatre is you and the cast, and then you've got that one other thing, which is the audience. There's no point in doing a show unless the audience is there, and the audience will then tell you whether it's working or not. If it's a comedy and they're not laughing, you're not doing it right. If it's supposed to be high emotive drama and they're not listening, you'll hear it. So in a way, theatre is lovely because it allows you that one thing of working between the same words, action and cut. This time you walk onto the stage, you can't stop the train. You just keep going, and you're listening to them. So it's a lovely process because it has a beginning, middle, and end as a journey as a character.
Let's trace it back to your childhood. You were born in Pakistan,
yes,
and came over to Britain when you were 3.
Yes.
What do you remember of those very early years?
I just remember my dad saying he was going to the shops and then not seeing him again for 3 years. That's what I remember.
he was an eye surgeon, wasn't he?
He came to Britain to become an eye surgeon. That's what he was, a doctor, but he couldn't specialise in because there were no institutions then. And he decided he wanted to come here and become a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons, which meant that he'd become Mr. Malik.
That's right, but it's not doctor anymore.
Not doctor anymore, and that's what he wanted to do. So he left his family of 5 sons. I was the youngest then. I was about 6 months old when he came here, and then we all came about 3 years later. It's just very extraordinary, Suddenly you're wandering around your home in Bhaulpur, which is a city in Pakistan, and the next thing you know, 6 weeks later, you're getting off a boat in Liverpool. It's cold, it's wet. And then before you know it, we're in a 1-bedroom flat in Finsbury Park. I just remember the flat. All it had a very large living area with a snooker table in it. I mean, a full-size snooker table, which 2 of my brothers used to sleep on top of, and the rest of us used to sleep underneath it.
What characteristics do you think you got from your parents? What were the particular traits they had that rubbed off onto you?
I think from my father I learnt tolerance. I mean, I know that he would suggest that is something to do with his faith, with Islam. I think it's more to do with just the fact that he had the generosity of spirit to be tolerant, to be able to turn around to me when I was, in my late teens, going, I want to be an actor, and yet everybody else is turning into doctors and engineers and lawyers, and I'm sitting there going, no, I'm going to be an actor.
And of course, there were no real Asian actors around.
And there was nobody, and most of my family, I think, those would sort of say, there's a word in Urdu called izzat, which means honor, and somehow I was going to sort of tarnish the honor of the family by becoming an actor. I think that was because of their fears that I might turn into some sort of Bollywood type actor. And at that time, that was so far away from what I wanted to do. And I think the other fear, which is the real fear, is the fact that it is a very precarious profession.
Right.
And I think they thought that they might, I think my father thought that his Bank of Dad T-shirt was never, ever going to be washed.
What about your mother? What characteristics did she give to you?
Good food and laughter in the house. I think there's an extraordinary... images that I have of my childhood, which is, a very Victorian father with all his men friends in the front room, talking politics. I mean, from the comfort of their armchairs, of course, but actually putting the world to right. Whereas in the kitchen was food being prepared and laughter, and usually a lot of jokes about the men in the front room. So as a child, you're sort of in between the two going, oh, I see, this is good.
They sent you off to Quetta in Pakistan when you were 10 years old.
Yes, I was sent back to a boarding school. Yes, we were sent to an English boarding school back in on the borders of Afghanistan and Pakistan, a place called Quetta, which my uncle was the headmaster of, and that's where we were sent back to.
For discipline?
No, I think just to get us ready to go back. Because I think he was worried that we weren't going to be able to read or write or do. I still can't. I mean, I can speak Urdu. My mother prefers me not to. She says it's a beautiful language, which I butcher.
Okay.
So it's, it was kind of formative. It's good to,
What do you recall of that? Because it's sort of wild frontier.
Yeah, it's wild frontier, and you were told never to talk to the Pathans because they had these voluminous pantaloons that they wore in which they stole children and hid them and took them off into the mountains. So you were kind of wary of everything. I was, funnily enough, all I remember of that time is that there was a boy from Afghanistan, and he showed me photographs of what his life was like in Kabul then. So I'm talking about, 1962. And I just wanted to be an Afghan. Kabul the city was beautiful. The people had a sort of, they looked like they were, they did. They looked like they were Europeans. Kabul looked like the Paris. It was just fantastic. And I was sort of reminded of that after, the recent escapades that the West has taken into.
You survived about a year there before coming back to Britain, yeah?
Yeah, I was allowed to, my uncle decided that the boys' boarding side of it was actually going to have to be turned into the girls, a senior girls' school. So, yeah, we came back.
And what was that time in Britain like for you? What do you recall of the 60s in Britain, where really I think things were getting quite sort of wild and...
Well, I think things were wild. I mean, it was a great place to be. I mean, there's no question that there was love around, and there was love in its emotional state, and love also available in its physical state, which for a young man was very exciting. But there was also a growing realization that actually, it sort of went from what was known as queer bashing, which was the euphemism for gays of the time, and queer bashing stopped, and then it became Paki bashing, and then Paki bashing stopped, and suddenly you had, at the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 70s, you had a realization in Britain that there is nothing we can do other than accept and embrace the fact that we are ethnics. You know, we're multicultural, and we have to really embrace it. We have to listen, and I think because of that, you then get in something like the latter part of the 70s. You get the idea that something like Jewel in the Crown can be made.
Schooling wasn't that great for you because you had sort of mild dyslexia, and of course business studies wasn't going to pan out.
Well, I'd say it was really acute. I would say it was acute, but it probably was just mild. But I would like to say it was. No, I didn't find passing exams very easy. I found concentrating on algebra and just a nightmare.
And no one knew at that time what dyslexia
No, they
really
just
was,
thought
yeah.
you were just, away with the fairies,
So what was it that made you think acting is for me?
It was just the realization that I think it was something that I could do. I could actually remember these lines and go on a stage and make people believe that I was saying them for the first time.
And of course you ended up in one of the most prestigious establishments in Britain, in Guildhall. So did life really become a lot easier with that kind of tag?
Well, I think Guildhall was there were two reasons for doing Guildhall, I suppose. One was that I did it for me. But I think also there was a part of me that was hoping that my parents would take some sort of comfort in the fact that I'd actually got into one of the best drama schools of the time. I mean, Guildhall is still there today, and that to me was a moment when I thought, yes, okay, I'm on the right track.
I'm going to ask about your defining moments in just a moment, so don't go away. We're taking a short break here on 101. We'll be right back.